jumping into this with Charlie's London, content creator wise, who are you and your upcoming project? Because this one, as soon as I heard about it, I was like, wait, what? I like the idea of that.
I'm the writer and the editor. I'm essentially sort of the person that oversees it all because I'm the license and everything is in my name because it's an officially licensed project and product. I will oversee it all, so I'm not doing the art, but I am writing the script and I'm editing the script as well, and obviously making sure when the art comes in, it's historically accurate, it sticks to the actual things that we know and the text that's available. So that's my role in it.
Do you have a quick synopsis of the project? Because I do want to back it up and touch on that license real quick.
Yeah, so the idea is it doesn't start in the beginning of his life. It starts in 1952 when he comes back to London and he essentially is just finished filming one of his films called Limelight, which a lot of historians say it was quite like semi-autobiographical. So there's a lot of his own personal life he put in that from growing up. And unusually, he premiered it in London, which wasn't something that he really did. And it was while he was on his way over here, he found out that McCarthyism had finally got its hold on him and he wasn't allowed back to the States unless he went in front of the House of Un-American Activities. And he refused. And many people have asked, like, why did he refuse? And he refused because he was stubborn by all accounts. He just was like, why do I have to prove myself? I've not done anything wrong. So when he did used to come to London, which happened quite a few times, he used to often go around the streets of where he grew up. And so I sort of played around with that idea that I knew that he did that in 52. So the idea is when he goes on the walking around the streets of London on his own little personal tour, you go back to find out how the streets of London helped to shape him as a person and the character he created. So that's the idea. So it starts then and it sort of goes back and it jumps in themes rather than it going sort of year by year. So you understand that, you know, this particular part of his life was an inspiration for this film and this particular part of his life was an inspiration for this film and so on.
It is a graphic novel. How many pages?
96.
Is it a one and done? Do you have others following? Is it a continuation?
Well, actually, at the moment, I want to backtrack on one thing. It's 64 with the potential going to 96, depending on what stretch goals we hit and how the script actually extends over this time, because the artist at the moment is working with my script. So he's working through that now. The script is completely done. It has, at the moment, it's one book, but it does have the potential to be 3. Okay. And the contract is for the minimum of 1, the maximum of 3 at the moment.
What can and can't you discuss about that contract? Can you back up and explain some of that? How did you even fall into that? How did that happen? How did you put that together?
Well, it wasn't something one day I sat up and went, I know I'm going to make a comic about Charlie Chaplin. Let me contact them and see if they'll do it. I've known them for quite a while. I've done things with them before. I've been quite involved in sort of the silent film community. Always been interested in comics. And then something just one day went, why don't you actually try to make a comic of his life so that people that are new to him can pick this up, read this, and then go off and read the actual books that, you know, that exist, that are quite heavily based academic books in many ways. Or even if you make them pick up his films, your job's done as well, you know, because the idea is this is going to complement everything. It's the bridge between those two things, the books and the films. Kind of, as I've said to people before, kind of like the Robert Downey Jr. film, slightly more historically accurate and in a graphic novel. That's what I'm doing with it.
Now, as far as the accurate bits compared to, I would imagine some stuff is going to be in there too, balance-wise. Is it going to be like an 80-20, or do you have an idea as far as how close you're going to ride that line?
It's probably going to be 85 to 90% accurate, because the great thing about having a license and having access to the archives is he had itineraries of places that he went. So I'll know exactly how many days he was in London. So exactly how many days I've got to play around with. I know exactly where he went at different points. I know that when he left London, he went straight to Paris, you know, so things like that. So really the only things that I'm going to maybe have to have a bit of creative license with is things that there is no record of. Mm-hmm. And so I will sort of infer where he was or what he was doing. So, and I'll do that by what he was doing the day before and what he was doing after, and plausible where he's going to be that moment in time.
Is it tricky dealing with maybe his thoughts, opinions, feelings, or do you have a good handle on a lot of that, like his dialogue, interactions?
Nope, because I've got them right here. There are 2 definitive books that are my Bibles for this project. There is this one, which is his own words.
That's
Not
him on
always.
the cover.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
think
him
I've
on the
ever
cover.
seen him outside of his character.
That I think is what's intriguing people about the campaign as well, because the images that are on there at the moment are him as himself in 52.
Mm-hmm.
So people are a bit sort of taken aback by, hang on, this isn't the tramp. So this is his own words. This is not always brilliantly accurate because there's certain things he glossed over, but it's great for understanding how he speaks. Equally, goes back to my job as a history teacher. First thing you tell the kids, even if something isn't necessarily brilliant, doesn't mean it has no value. So I read that and I think, like, why did he leave that bit out? Why did he leave that person out? What was going on in his life at that time where he did? But the one that is definitive, you're not going to beat it, is this one. But look how thick it is.
Damn.
So this is the reason why I want to use these two to basically create a bridge that people want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is everything you need to know. Like this book is now about 40 years old and it hasn't been beaten. Like even the Chaplin they have said that one is still the definitive book, and those two books are what the Robert Downey Jr. film was actually based on.
No kidding. Now I could imagine there's a ton of different moments that that you love in particular, but is there one that stands out that's actually in the current project? Because I know there's probably a whole range that when you read the stories or whatever you fell in love with, but is there one that's in the project that stands out as maybe your favorite?
I have a real soft spot for the relationship he had with his mother, and I think the relationship he had with his mother really did define a lot of the things that he did, and I think it defined the way he wrote female characters and equally how he saw females in his own life, because in an age he was a Victorian boy. He grew up, you know, he was born in 1889. Queen Victoria was still on the throne. The British Empire was the biggest thing on the globe, and in a time when we had all this luxury and riches as a country and an empire, he was living pretty much like Oliver Twist. And his mum had serious cases of mental illness to the point that 14 years of age, he had to put her in a mental asylum because she couldn't cope to be out in the real world. And there's this very there's a dynamic between them of 1 minute he's the adult, then she's the adult. And then he's got an older brother who's also more like a father figure to him, to the point his older brother goes on to be his manager throughout most of his life, and the bond between them two is very strong. And Chaplin has a mental breakdown when his mother dies in the 20s. So it is that relationship I think is really, really important. When he was very, very small, she realised she couldn't cope. And this is before the welfare state. This is before we had any sort of safety net for the poor and underprivileged in the countries. She checked herself into a workhouse and gave her boys in and said, I can't look after them. And for a mother, especially when the stigma of being a single parent was still so rife, for her to hold her hands up and admit to that, it's pretty powerful stuff. So I think that's definitely going to be something that's going to interest me to see come to life in the book.
With this project and putting it together, how long has it been in the works?
It's been an idea I've played around with on and off for about 5 years, I reckon. I've had this idea of doing something like this. To actually be in fruition has probably been about 18 months.
18 months.
Backwards and forwards.
And what made you decide Indiegogo?
Because a lot of the people that I know have funded on Indiegogo, they've used Indiegogo. And there was a lot of negativity about Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I know a lot of people that have worked directly with Indiegogo, and I think that they seem like quite a good site to use. So I went with them. They're also they're very trusted amongst like the crowdfunding comics community. So I thought, yeah, that to me was a good move. And the other thing as well was there is another Chaplin book, The Fuhrer and the Tramp, which is, I'm pretty sure I'm sure it has been released. I've seen bits of it. And that was on Kickstarter. So when I spoke to the Chaplins, I also thought, well, if I say Indiegogo as well, that's a completely different site to their previous book that they've licensed. So therefore, there might be, I don't know necessarily how these things work behind the scenes. So my brain was they might be much more happy at being on a completely separate crowdfunding site than the previous book they've done. Then there's no legal red tape. I don't know how these things work behind the scenes. I just know like sort of the contract I've got, for example.
That's in part why we went to Indiegogo for Doomsday Kingdom. It really felt like it was for now, hands off when it came to censorship. I think that was a big one, because when it comes to that creative playground, I call it, you want as less restrictions as possible. Now, kind of segueing into that, are there many, if any at all, restrictions with what you can do? Maybe areas are a little too sensitive, a little too personal that you can't touch on, or is...
If it's in the books, it's fine. I mean, I always double check anything. But much more, the things I check are not that. The things I check are, for example, book 2 is going to be looking at the Second World War, and it will include the Great Dictator. So it's more things of, if I want to use the transcript of the speech of the Great Dictator, am I legally allowed to, for copyright reasons? It's not anything. I mean, I have such a good working relationship with them that they have not had any issues with anything. There's been some slight tweaking of the art, but that's to be expected.
Yeah.
That's always the sort of thing that happens. But other than that, they've been really, really good.
What would people be getting into story-wise and story arc-wise?
They'll be getting sort of an idea that the whole mess he got in with this false accusation of communism pretty much comes from where he grew up. Because interesting, especially what's going on with politics and stuff at the moment, is that, you know, our idea of left-wing is very different to the idea of left-wing in America. We do have a socialized medicine. We do have a socialized state. And when Chaplin was growing up, there wasn't such a thing. But as a result of 2 world wars, we ended up getting a Labour government, which is technically centred left, really. It's not really as left as people think it is. And they brought in the welfare state. They brought in the national health system. And when he came back in the 50s, there's a video on YouTube from Pathé Films where he talks about socialized medicine, which obviously didn't go down very well with the Americans, because he would use the word socialism, but his idea of socialism wasn't communism. It was something owned by society. And if society and state were the same thing, then the country had something that was a socialized government. And I think that you'll get the idea that there was no other way he could be and no other way he could think, because he wouldn't have won if he had completely turned his back on his upbringing and been, completely privileged and completely lived in his glass house, his ivory tower, and not embraced the roots he had. People would have called him privileged. But if he did what he was doing, which he did, he would have been called a socialist. So he wasn't going to win in the era that he lived in. And I think that people will get that, and they'll see that you'll see a silent film star, that everything you're visually seeing is what you're meant to be taking in, but you'll realise behind the camera and behind the makeup there is much, much more that people don't necessarily realise. And that was the story I wanted to tell. That's why I said it's between 64 and 96 pages, because we will stop when this story is told properly. And luckily enough, we've got sort of the creative freedom that we can do that.
I do like that cover. Whose idea was it from the cover? Is that from anything, from an ad? It looks really familiar.
That's by Carl Stefan, who wrote Mary Boys.
Okay.
And we came up with some ideas of, we had the Donald DeLay cover, which is the little boy running through the street. We had the Vinnie Tartamella cover, which was the classic tramp. And we wanted to do something maybe slightly abstract, play around with something a bit comical. And then we came up with this idea of him almost being, London being his playground. So him sitting on top of a theatre larger than life. Because the way that he looks in that is very early 20s Chaplin, which is when he was the most famous man in the world and literally had the world at his feet. And that's what we were trying to convey. And that wasn't meant to be a cover. No, it wasn't meant to be a cover. It was meant to be a stretch goal print. And the original 3rd cover was meant to be done by Billy Tucci. And I put this picture up on my Facebook page, my Charlie's London Facebook page, and Billy follows it, and he put on the page, this is one of the greatest covers I've ever seen. And when I messaged him and said, but it's not a cover, Billy, it's a print, he said, no, this is your 3rd cover, not mine. Mine will be the print. So he actually said, no, this has to be the cover. And I'm so glad that I did, because I think it's the biggest selling cover on my campaign alone, without being added into any other tiers. It sold 71, I believe. So it's amazing, and it captures everything that you can say about the tramp as well.
Yeah, I think it pops visually, plus it has that symbolism to it.
The one thing I love about all the covers on this campaign is they do have their own audiences. There's something on there for everybody. And, it's been lovely that people have actually complimented me on the fact that this campaign is really well put together. because I spent ages making sure that I did my research, that I planned everything, and I think I'd like to think that it shows.
Who did the image of him brushing his hair in front of, is that his makeup chair?
That's my artist Mickey, and that's who is doing all the interiors. Those interior pages are all by him.
That page is friggin' fantastic. For some reason, it reminds me of the movie Joker a little bit.
Really weird you said that,
Yeah.
because if you watch the Joker, there's a Charlie Chaplin film in there,
Is it?
and it's officially licensed again. In fact, the conductor in that scene is a man called Timothy Brock, and he does all the Chaplin live shows that still go on with live audio, with a live orchestra. He's the conductor on them. So it's interesting that you said that.
That's cool. It might just be the makeup chair thing that got me with his makeup set, and Joker was trying to force his smile on. That's what kind of brought it to me there. But that picture is good. Now this one I just mentioned, is this an interior art piece, or is this something that is a print as well?
It's the first page. There is talk about it being a print as well, because we think, we had so many people ask for that. It might be something that's a further stretch goal.
I like that one a lot, especially. That's one of my favorites. With the tone of this book, what would you say the overall tone is?
It's like him. 1 minute it's very, very happy and it's very, very comedic, and the next minute it's incredibly melancholy, and it will slap you in the face of how harsh things are. That's what I wanted. I wanted the same feeling that you'd get from watching one of his films that you'd get from reading this book. So you're not going to feel like it's not entertainment. You're not going to feel, oh God, why did I read that? But you're going to stop, and I think my main focus is when you watch one of his films, you won't watch it in the same way again. I think that's what I would like to happen.
I tell you what, let's cover some of the tiers.
The featured tier is all 3 covers, and at the moment on there it says it's got 2 prints. It's actually got 3 prints, because when we hit the 10k stretch goal, the 3rd cover, which was the Cole Stefan cover, is also included as a print. So I purposely left it off there so that when the stretch goal was unlocked, it meant that the completists in the people that have backed it will get all of them. The other one that's really, really popular is the the subscription tier, as you call it. So it's the Keystone Kit and Caboodle tier. So it's the one that you literally get everything. So anything that gets added onto the campaign that you would have had to have paid for an additional item, if you back that box, you don't actually end up paying any more. The only thing that wasn't included in that was the 24-hour variant cover, which was the black and white of Donald DeLay's cover of the little boy. There was a black and white variant, and that was only available for the first 24 hours. So those 2 are the most successful on there, apart from Cole Stefan's individual cover. So it's proven to be really, really good. We're looking at getting some extra things, like there's going to be some more stickers, and there's also going to be probably some t-shirts in the second 30 days, but they're sort of being designed right now.
So you're ending sometime in...
It's the 15th of December.
15th
but
of
I will
December.
go in demand.
Sorry, I cut you off twice.
That's all right. That's all right. I was going to say, we're going to go in demand, and the campaign will stay in demand until book 2 is decided on. So if I don't do book 2, I'll just leave the campaign in demand. But I'm pretty sure I am going to end up doing book 2. And then that campaign will shut down, and the campaign for book 2 will go up, which you'll also have the option to buy book 1. So
Gotcha.
It will be there will be a roll in, and I really like the idea that when I've done the 3rd and final book, that there will be a hardback of all 3 of them as well, because and I know this is a lot of people in comics do this. They're very, very interested in, like, the idea what Robert Kirkman did with the Walking Dead books, where he had like the trade paperbacks, and then he had the hardbacks. I always got, in fact, they're just over there. I've got all the hardbacks. I waited that year and got them, because I actually really like that idea of just having like almost the sets. And then I think you had the compendiums as well, but I didn't ever get them. I got the hardback ones, because sometimes I think that coffee table book looks really nice, and that's sort of what I want to do with mine.
It's a good idea. How about moving on to printing and shipping? Do you have an estimated roundabout?
Oh, well, I have said that I want my book to be in everyone's hand by the 16th of April, which is Chaplin's birthday. I'd like everyone to have their book by then, to have sort of a nice rounded thing. But I'm going to keep it as close to that as I possibly can. Obviously, with what's going on out there in the world at the moment, there's a lot of delays and things with shipping and whatnot. But I am using Mixam, and they do have a UK base. So I felt a lot more comfortable using them, knowing I could just pick up the phone and try and sort things out, because they've also got an office here. So that's kind of what the plan's going to be. What I'm going to be doing in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start getting all my prints printed, for the simple reason that, speaking to loads and loads of people who have done this before, they always say the thing that holds down a campaign, like slows it down, is not actually getting the book, it's all the stuff that comes with it, the prints and the bookmarks and all these other things. So I'm going to start getting them in the next couple of weeks, so that when I'm ready to go, it's just lay everything out and put it in the right packages.
We did that. In fact, we went ahead and bought the trading cards, the mini posters, the bookmark. We did it early, and we stacked them in the bubble bag and got it all prepped and ready to go. I think that's a fantastic idea to do it, because then when you get your book in, you're set. Like, we have about 200 and 250 ready to go right now. So for U.S. orders, I can get it on and popping. Now, I don't like to ask like a really general question and leave you searching for words, but if there was any lasting pitch, or maybe something we might have missed, or anything I didn't bring up that can really focus in on something that's interesting, or something that may pop for anyone that's on the fence or kind of interested in the project.
The only other thing I can think of is that people don't realise how far-reaching Chaplin's sort of life was, to the point that he was very, very good friends with Stan Laurel, with Laurel and Hardy fame. And, you know, people often forget that Stan Laurel himself was actually English. And on that campaign, there's a one-shot story which is about the friendship between them, that you can buy to expand the universe, and find out that how they actually rubbed off on each other, and how just how influential the silent era really was. And I think that people are going to be surprised, because many people, when this first came out, thought this was a bit of a niche art book. And the more pages they're seeing, it's got a graphic novel vibe. It's definitely a comic book. It's not going to be a boring, biographic novel, if you want. It's going to be something that's going to be really special. And I wouldn't have done it without the blessing of the Chaplin estate. And I'm really glad that I went down the right path, because 100%, this is going to be a really, really important project.
There's something about that, the rough upbringing, the stuff with his mother. I think for me, emotionally, that brings out something that I feel could interest me to some degree in the book and the stories that's coming out.
Well, it's interesting, because the one thing that sort of gets bounded around a lot, I get asked a lot about, is the so-called scandal with young women. But the interesting thing is that when Chaplin had relations with these young women, he didn't know how old they really were. Their parents were very much responsible for that. His second wife, her parents lied about her age to get her a part in his film. So when he had a relationship with her and she got pregnant, he thought she was, I think, between the age of 18 and 21, and she was 15.
Oh, really?
And he took her to Mexico to get married. And what is interesting is this is a time before DNA.
Yeah.
He could have easily paid her off, got rid of her, claimed it wasn't his. He didn't. He stuck by her, because his mother had not only had someone do very similar things to her, abandoned her, but equally there was a brother after Sydney and Charlie, and the father just came along one day, because she had a relationship after the relationship broke down with his father. He came along one day and took the baby by force and took the child abroad, and Charlie never saw his brother till they were adults, and they think that left a mental scar on Hannah, that she had this child ripped from her. And of course that's something that happens in the kid. And I think that these things growing up, that's why he never abandoned any of these children, and he never had sort of tossed these women aside. He actually married Lita Gray and had 2 children with her, and tried to make the relationship work, and it just did not work. So that's something that gets bound around a lot, that people are going to see a different side to. There's only one story I'm leaving out, and I think it's because it's disrespectful to put it in and it has no context. And that's when he dies, grave robbers stole his body.
Really? See,
Yeah.
I think I might have. That might have been one of those fun facts you read along the way. Is there anything other information about that? I think I'm a little too curious to wait on that one. Did they ever get it
Well,
back?
it's not going to be in the book, so I can tell you. The reason I'm not putting it in the book is it's got no context to the story I'm telling, and also I just think I don't want to put things in just for a shock value.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. His body was stolen before New Year, 1978. The family were. It was held to ransom, and his family were just like, just pay the money, like we just want this back. We just want him back. And in the end, it was the younger brother. There was two brothers and a friend involved in this in Switzerland. And I believe the story goes it was the younger brother who just caved in because he believed it was the wrong thing to do. And he phoned up the police, pretended to be someone else and confessed. And then they recovered the body pretty quickly. But if you go to Switzerland, where he's buried, like I have, he's buried under about 6 feet of concrete just to stop it from happening, like someone trying to do it again. But the weird thing is, as horrible as that is, you can almost imagine that wherever he was looking down, he'd probably find it quite funny because it's almost like a story from a silent film, from a slapstick,
Yeah.
So it's but yeah, that's the sort of, even in death he had a completely crazy life. So it's definitely a lot. I think people are going to be surprised, but I think he's going to resonate with people more than they realize, because where he was chucked out of America and all this stuff, he's almost the king of cancel culture. And there's so much of that going on now. I think that people are going to actually stop and go, wait a minute, all this stuff that we're experiencing now, it's not new. It's been happening before to many people. So that's another sort of little thing that I'm trying to work in there.
You say the king of cancel culture?
Yeah, that's what he really was,
Yeah.
because they tried to cancel him so many times and he just kept bouncing back.
I think that's a really interesting point. I didn't think of that. I know sometimes when you look back, you often see history repeating itself in weird ways. Like right now, we have social media. People jump on there and they scream, we call them Karens, and this is all new and fresh and yada, yada, yada. But it's not. I mean, back in the day, we had newspapers and magazines where the moms, they called them, the moms would call it, the video game's too gory, this movie's got too much, you know what I mean? So it's in a way, it's the same date you're going on. She's just wearing a different dress. But going back as far as Charlie Chaplin, and you're talking the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. When did he die? 60...
77, Christmas
77.
Day, 1977.
So he was only dead a year, and they stole his body. You said it was 78 when they took his body.
No, it was New Year. It was January 78. So he was dead a couple of weeks.
Oh,
and they
wow.
stole his body.
Yeah, that's wildly disrespectful. At first, I thought, like, all right, they stole some bones. I see what you mean, but they straight up.
No, because it's that fresh in the story. That's why that's the one thing I'm definitely not putting in, because it's just got no context of what I'm trying to tell.
I could see that, because something that just happens to him after the fact. It's not like well, I don't want to say he's not involved in it, but I could see the struggle there. Well, there's a lot more that's interesting with Charlie Chaplin than I even had a clue on. But I'm hoping that people find these interesting and informative, and we can have you back on maybe towards the end of your campaign, maybe the last week or so, and have some other things to discuss. Maybe if anyone wants to leave some comments down below or some questions down below, we can get into some fan feedback next time. But thank you very much for stopping by.
That's all right, no problem. And give a shout out to James, because he's my backer number one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. James Milne, artist of Doomsday Kingdom, is the number one backer.
Yeah.
Cool. He hit me up, and he was gloating about that. I was working, and he was telling me, he's like, hey, the campaign's going up, yada, yada. He was keeping me in the loop. And I was like, all right, that's cool. And then I see a message just come up, and he was like, I'm number one, or something like that. I think it was like the next day.
Me. Yeah.
Yeah, he was gloating about that. But yeah, he says nothing but good things about you and your whole team. A lot of people in Comicsgate UK, right?
Or CG UK, as they call themselves.
CG UK.
He's definitely part of the family. Is good old James, and it's been very much a group project from there as well, because Carl Stefan is in there. And so there's various people worked on that project that have helped me out. So yeah, it's been absolutely incredible.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.